Food is always good.
Okay, so a little rundown of everything we've done so far. First of all, we have this countries data. It's an array of objects that contain name, capital, languages, population, flag, region, and area. Some of this info will be using it, some others not, I guess. Okay. Anyway, the intention is to create what shows up here. So we've got world countries data. Currently, we have so number of countries. That's the total number of countries in that array. Down here, and this only shows up when somebody has started searching, right? We see a certain number of countries satisfied the search results or the samples. Yeah, satisfy the search criteria. Then there's a search bar, a few sort buttons, and this icon. This icon actually, have you seen these go to top buttons in websites? They're usually around the bottom right corner.
Yes.
That's kind of what that icon there does. Instead of go to top, it's go to graph. Because at the bottom of this list of countries, this display of countries, there's a graph that shows some kind of things, a bar chart, if you will. So this immediately transports the user down here. Let's just watch for a bit for you to replay and get to that point. You see, when this is full, once they click on this, you will immediately see the graph. Yeah. So that's what's happening with that. Now, these ones are sort buttons, right? Regardless of whether it's all the countries that are showing or some of the countries, depending on this search criteria, if you click on any of these buttons, it sorts these based on whatever you clicked on. Like name, arranges, with name, alphabetical, ascending, descending, capital, ascending, descending, population, ascending, descending, something like that. And then at the bottom of this display of countries, we now have this chart. And what the chart does is just to show population and languages, right? The largest populations. At first, I thought it was in the world, but then it now looks, you can see that when these filtered countries, changes, these guys also change. This is at first the world, China, India. But now you're seeing Bulgaria, Christmas Island, Fiji. So that means it's looking at this list of filtered countries. That's what determines what's going to show up here. Okay. So yeah, there's population and there's languages. In the languages side, we would see the most spoken languages among the available countries. So at the beginning, it starts out as English, what do they call it? A few other languages, but English is the most spoken. Okay. So earlier, the picture that we saw, because it's a mini project on Asabeni 30 days of JavaScript. A picture seems to be available if you enter day 25, on the website. And when we downloaded it, it wasn't really this that we saw. It was a different picture. Let me see if I can get that picture. But that picture didn't have those parts at the top. Yeah, this was it. This was what it showed us at the beginning. So just this, population, languages, most spoken languages in the world. You've got this, and then still languages. Okay, this is a GIF, right? Yeah, this is a GIF. So it just shows you switching. You click on population, you see 10 most populated countries in the world. You click on languages, you see 10 most spoken languages in the world. This was what we did at first. So it's later on.
So the most populated is which one? Most populated now is which?
You don't need to ask.
India.
It's China. No, it's
China,
China.
yeah, that's true.
I
China,
don't
yeah,
think
yeah,
anybody
that's
has
true,
been
that's true.
China in a long time.
It's true. I had a quiz one time and it was just yesterday even it was China. Okay, 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 okay.
Yeah, but this data should be old by about 2 years or so. I don't know if it's really accurate. The
Meaning that another
population data
country has taken
especially.
over.
No, no, no. I don't think anybody's in India. Right now people are
Oh,
even right. Well, some countries are looking to increase their population, sure, but those ones are not anywhere near these guys. Yeah. Like I heard some funny stories of was it Japan? That they're actually willing to pay black people to come and have kids with them. It was a little
Japan.
funny. Yeah. I I don't know why that was happening, but such is life. Anyway,
Why is this
this was
chart
the
for
picture with
China and India not stretching out? Like, why is it just short? Is that how it should be indicated? The one for China and India, they were looking a bit short, like they didn't span long, considering the fact that I was saying that they are the largest. Yeah.
okay. Okay. So you see what's going on here. You know how bar charts are now. You pick a particular scale and then the length or the height of your bar corresponding to that scale would say what the actual value is. So apparently for this one now, for this, the languages part, they picked a scale that I would say is about 100, right? So English is 91, it stops around here. French is 45, that's around here, blah, blah, blah. But for the world's, but for population, they made their 100% to be the world's total population. When it goes back there, you see. World is 7.6 billion, right? So all the other bars are percentages of this world population. China is this low because that 1 point whatever billion is that percentage of 7.6 billion. India, that percentage of 7.6 billion. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so that's why these ones are small like this. So we've been able to achieve this beautifully. We even went above and beyond and made it to have a kind of flutter effect. This is what I mean. If we scroll down to where these guys are, I think I need to add some more padding here because it's too close to the bottom. So if we click on, say, population, it starts out with languages. Click on population, you see how they just kind of flutter in. Yeah. It's a nice effect, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so later on we found that picture that showed, a display of countries with filtering and sorting. And so we decided to also add that. I mean, it's fun to do, isn't it? Okay. So, yeah, we may still need to make some few adjustments to the UI because I'm seeing something here. If you look, all the country names start on the same level, right? But that's not how in ours we have Afghanistan up here, Island down here, Albania, like that, like that, like that, like that. So we need to kind of centralize it some kind of way.
We need to visit all
But
of
maybe
these
we would treat
countries.
that. Which one do you want to visit?
I want to come to
Antarctica.
Nigeria.
People they try run away, you all come. Okay, so um, yeah, the next thing we did was to create a template for these guys, right? Just one. Of course, they're in a grid container right now that has seven things in a row. Maybe I think I should change that to flex because from what I'm seeing here, uh, you know, from what I'm seeing in this other place, it seems it's flex they used. we justify space between, which is why this guy is happening like this. Okay, maybe not space between. Anyway, that one will come later. So yeah, we've done the sorting and the scroll. So as we are here now, if you click on this, immediately shows you this guy. Immediately just scrolls there. So let's go through a bit of how the whole thing happened. You know, as usual, you start with the HTML, right? So in the header, we've got this bold stuff, world countries data, and we have a subtitle. This is where there will be that there are 250 countries here. And we wanted to do that with JavaScript since we need to count with JavaScript the number of countries in the array. Okay. Well, I've got this search summary. This is the one that is supposed to be when you are searching, when you start writing things into the box. This one says there are 7 countries that meet the search criteria. So as usual, empty at the beginning because we can easily fill it up with JavaScript. Then we've got the main. And this main, well, just has the rest of the useful code or the rest of the useful content in the page. So there's this search header. I guess that's what this section is for. And this section is for displaying the countries. And then we've got this other section. This one is for the buttons to switch between population and languages. And I think there's a text there that says something. Yeah, 10 most popular languages in the world or 10 most populated countries in the world, something like that. And then this section is for the graph or the bar chart. Okay, so taking it one by one at the beginning, we've got this input, right? And then below that, we've got this with 3 buttons and this icon. Go to graph bit button. Maybe I should have made this a button, but all good, sure. I guess in the spirit of semantic HTML, this should have been a button, not a span. So I keep that in mind. But of course, if you don't care about semantic HTML, this is fine as well. Okay, so the div for displaying countries, as you would expect, is empty. During the creation of that whole thing, there were some divs in here for the country cards, just to test out and see that we get things looking kind of right. And then those were removed and taken into JavaScript to be a template. Buttons for switching between population and languages, and this text to display a bit of something, say what exactly is going on in the graph. And now the graph itself, again, empty, because the bars will be put in JavaScript. Okay. So now we are importing 2 scripts. One, countries data that has the array of countries, and the other is main.js, where we are actually writing the JS that controls this. So it's important to note that this guy came first. The countries data came first before the main.js. And that is a useful thing because when you import scripts in JS, right, it's kind of like you have one big script, and then you're just copying the contents from here and putting it into that main one, and copying the content from here, putting it into that main one. So you know about this word sometimes keeps my mind. I don't know why this word is not coming to me right now, but you can't access a variable before you have initialized that variable.
Is it hoisting?
Is it what?
Is it hoisting? This hosting. This hoisting.
I get what you mean, hoisting. But it's not really hoisting per se. I'm talking about.
Okay.
Hoisting only happens in this context with var, with the var keyword. If you create a variable with var, then you can use it You can access its value even before you describe it. Okay, but anyway, what I mean is, like we described or we initialized array 11 here. I can't come over here and start using array 11, right? I have to be using array 11 after I have initialized it. Okay, so imagine that situation where you're copying, where this is like copying this into a big file and then this one next. So because this one is imported first, this variable called countries data can now be accessed in this main.js without importing it. So you can see I have a console log, countries, and the value is countries data. But countries data is coming from this other file. And you can see that there's no import happening here. But just because this guy came first, okay, I can access its variables and functions from here. Does that make sense?
A little bit of recap, please.
A little bit of recap. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe. Okay. Maybe if you were doing React or some of this, you know that you can use functions and variables between files by importing them, exporting and importing them. Okay. But in
Okay.
Vanilla.js, you can kind of avoid or skip that a bit by just simply ordering, putting your script import in a particular order. So if you know you're going to import, you need something from this one inside here, then you just need to put this one first, import this one first, and then you can use its variables inside here. But if you want to be importing both ways, then you definitely have to use imports. Like if you want to be using a variable from here, inside here, and a variable from here, inside here, then you definitely have to use import. But if everything is going one way, like this guy has some variables and you want some other scripts down to use those variables, then simply put this guy first. Anyway, that's that. So in the main.js, as you'd expect, we start getting some variables from the HTML. So we've got body, document.body, subtitle L, I think that's the one where that says we have 250 countries. Yeah. Sort buttons, the name, capital, population buttons that are used to sort. Go to graph button that takes you directly to the graph. Countries wrapper for displaying the countries. The container to put in those country cards. Graph section. Okay, yeah. The reason for having graph section here is because when you click this go to graph button, it's going to show you this graph section. So graph section is just this graph section. This that contains the whole graph and the buttons above it. Yeah, so we've got button for languages, button for population, the graph title, the one that says 10 most populated countries in the world for languages. And then graph buttons. Now graph buttons are also languages and population. I can't remember why I had to get them one by one. Okay, I think I get that. We started doing the event listeners for them one by one before, we now try to do it together. Like just get the two buttons and apply something to them together. Okay. Then graph wrapper is just the wrapper for the bar chart. So we put the bars into graph wrapper. All right. So to begin with, now that we know that there's going to be filtering, like when you start writing into the search bar, the displayed countries is going to be reducing, based on the search criteria that you input. So that means we can't be directly using values from countries data. Instead, we need to keep a second container that we're now going to be putting countries in, and that will be the container will be looking at instead of countries data. So I named that filtered countries, and its initial value is just a copy of countries data. So always keep it in mind. If you have an object or array, something like that, and you want to make a separate version of it that you're going to be changing often, you should copy it. You shouldn't just say this new one is equal to that old one. Instead, it should be this new one is equal to a copy of that old one. Because, arrays, objects, all these are passed by reference. So unlike numbers or strings, where you can say maybe A is equal to hello world, and you want B to also be hello world, and you say B is equal to A. But then if you change the value of A, B doesn't change, right? Because B is separate. It's a separate hello world. A is a separate hello world. They don't really interfere with each other. But for arrays, objects, and non-primitives like them, when you create an object and you say, fine, okay, maybe this object, let's give it the name countries. And you now come again and say filtered countries. Okay, I think I have to take this call.
Hello? Hello, Jane.
What happened?
Oh, I think he said he wants to take a call real quick. He had a call that he needed to take.
Let's see. Okay. You guys can hear me, Abby?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. What was I saying
Yeah.
earlier? Okay. I was
Talking
talking
about
about
the button.
I was talking about references for this. Yeah, if you have an object, let's say countries data, you call it countries, or let's say it's just called countries data, and you say filtered countries is equal to countries or other countries data directly without copying it. If you now come over here and say do something to filtered countries that actually changes it, like say sort. Sort is a mutating array method. Like it actually changes the array. Something like that now. It's like you clone it. You create 2 copies of it or more copies of it. And so each of them are independent of the other. It's more of ownership or semi-ownership for arrays and objects. It's like the object is just there, and then you create a variable and say the variable should point to this object. So this variable contract is linked to this same object. You say filtered countries should be equal to countries data. Fine. It now means this variable called filtered countries is also linked to that same object. That same object that all of them are connected to. So rather we need to make a copy of it. Okay, so now we have a few things that want to happen when the page loads. So the simplest way to, or one, of course, there are usually some ways to do different things, or different ways to do the same thing sometimes in JavaScript. So one way is body.onload. This is actually an event listener. So you can either say body.add event listener, and the event is load, the function is this function, or you could just say body.onload is equal to this function. Anyway, in here, we just want to put something in subtitle. Currently, we have so and so number of countries. Now, if you notice from here, even when they are filtering, this 250 never changes. So that means this value is taken from the source of truth, like the complete array of things. So we have to use countries data. We shouldn't be using filtered countries. So countries data.length countries, and that's done. And then we call this function display country cards. But of course, the function is not it's not created yet. It's down here that you see the function display country cards. We'll look at it later. And then we also call this function show languages. And what show languages will do is that it's going to display the graph below. Okay, this is show languages. It's going to do some things and it's going to display the graph. Okay. And then for the sort buttons, we have to put an event listener on them. Remember, the sort buttons are the name, capital, population, blah, blah, blah buttons. So we got them as a query selector all. So it's a node list of elements. So we can do for each of it. So for each button, it's going to, if it's clicked on the click event, it's going to call this function sort countries. That's that. And then for the icon to go to graph, when it is clicked again, it calls this function go to graph. Simple stuff. For the graph buttons, I guess we're in a rush. So we wrote the function here directly. So for each graph button, the graph buttons I mean are the population languages button, that say this one, show population graph, show languages graph. So again, on click, this function is called this function first of all. So as you know, in events, you have what's it called? You have access to the element that was clicked and also, well, the element that the listener is attached to. But in this case, the graph buttons, there's really nothing inside them. Look at them, button. There's no span inside them or anything. So as long as you click this button, e.target and e.currentTarget are the same thing. So we could use any of them. So we went with e.target. So e.target, basically if you click any button, e.target is that button you clicked. So we stored some data into an attribute in those buttons. And that attribute is data BTN. Okay? And the data we stored is the type of that button. So you can take a look at them. You see this button, data BTN says population, and the text on the button is population. This one says languages. The text here is languages. So it's kind of a way for us to identify the button. Well, we could choose to use this instead. Like say maybe inner HTML, if inner HTML of the button is this. I just like to use data attributes better, because that way you are now free to do whatever you want inside the element itself. Yeah. So population. So we get the type from there. Right? If it's languages, then we want to call this function show languages. If the type is not languages, which means it's population. In this case, we know that there are only two things, so there are only two possibilities. If it's not languages, it's population. So if it's not languages, we call show population. And that's it. That's just what happens for these BTNs. We could, rather, instead of doing this, we could have done population btn.add event listener on click, call show population. Or the other one on click, you call show languages. But I think grouping them is kind of nicer. So you add think, I don't know. Either way is up to you, sure. So now, the function show languages. Okay. Um, we only have two of these buttons. Okay. There's this I think it's a class. Yeah, class list active. So if we look at this, obviously in this picture, there's no difference, right? Showing the languages, they look the same no matter which one is active at the moment, no matter which graph is shown. But I didn't like that. I wanted there to be some kind of change. So we added the class active to them. So whichever of these buttons is active, text to be white. At least that's an extra thing to say this is the one that's active. So you click population, population gets active, something like that. So because there are just two of them, we can forwrite this where you pick the other one and remove the active class from it and add the active class together. But if there are more than two, say 3 or more, then ideally what you would want to do is to, since we already have graph BTNs, it's a list of all the graph buttons, and we would use that graph BTNs for each again, and for each button we would remove active. So remove active from all of them, it's active from all of them, and then pick the one you want alone and add active to it. So that's kind of what's happening here. Remove active from population button, add active class to languages button. Then the graph title inner HTML should change. So, since it's languages, 10 most spoken languages in the world. Okay. And then we create this sorted languages is equal to this function count languages. We created a function for this. It's going to like look through this array, see how this array is funny. All the objects have a languages array. So Pashto, this one. So that count languages function now is going to remove all these arrays from all these objects and then flatten them, like put all their content into one big array and then I'll start counting them. So like Pashto, 1 time, Uzbek, 1, Turkmen, 1, Swedish, 1, Albanian, 1, until it meets something that shows twice. English, let's say 1, English 2, Russian 1, English 3, like that. That's how it's going to keep counting them. And then it's going to put them into an, I think, array of arrays that's at the end of the whole thing to be English is 91, this one is 1, this other one is 45, and then it's now going to, is it here? Yeah, it's going to do all of that, the whole counting, arranging them into name and number, and then sorting them from the highest to the lowest. Yeah, that's what it's now returned. So this sorted languages is just going to take that whole list and then slice it. Just take the first 10. So that first 10, it's now going to put it into this function populate graph. Okay, it's going to do a few more things to it, This count languages will do a few more things to it. So the whole process, yeah, this is just going to slice it, take the first 10 and put it into populate graph. So populate graph will take that information, right, and display the graph. So it's going to, the information is going to be, this is the text that should be here, this should be the width of the bar, and this should be the thing that should be displayed here. That's the information that is going to be passed into that populate graph function. So it's cool to kind of separate your code into functions like this. Like this function does this. You see, all the functions don't have so much happening in them, even though really a lot is happening in them. So now imagine we wrote it completely here, or we wrote the function, we wrote what's happening in populate graph here. This will look a lot longer and it will look more complicated. So whenever you see the chance, you can just, I think they call it abstraction. You can abstract some group of code separately. into another place. It looks nicer that way. So let's look at what count languages does first. So we've got, the whole array, filtered countries. Remember, we don't want to use countries data. We want to use filtered countries because if the countries are filtered, we really want to be looking at those filtered countries. Okay. So we map it and return only languages. So at the end of this mapping, we should just have an array that has plenty different arrays. Some arrays will contain one thing, some three, some two, like that. And then we call this function flat. So when you call flat on an array of arrays, it's just going to remove the smaller arrays. Just like pour everything into one big array. And that's what we want. And then we have this empty object. And so we start looping over languages. Languages now is just a big array of all the languages in all those countries. Just one big array of them. So we start checking. For each language that we meet, we put it as a property into this object and give it the value 1. So if every time we meet a language, we check, does it exist as a property in here? If it doesn't, we just put it, give it the value 1, and if it does, we increase whatever value it has. So at the end of the whole day, we should have an object that says English 91, this one 45, that one 3, like that. But now we know that we want to sort it. So you can't sort objects, right? So we need to turn it into an array. So we do this object.entries. And object.entries is going to return what's it called? It's going to return property and value. So for something now that has an object that has a property like English with a value of 91, it's going to convert that into an array that has a smaller array with English as the first item and 91 as the second item. Okay, so for each property value, key value pair in that object, they'll just be turned into arrays with the property first, the value next. Cool. So once we have that, it's an array, we can sort it. We want to sort by the values, which is the numbers, and those are they are the second item in the array. So they have the index of 1. So we do B index 1 minus A index 1. This sorts from highest to lowest. Yeah. And that's what sorted is. So, but we can't return sorted like this because whatever we're returning from this count languages array is going to be put into populate graph. So we need to get it into a way that population graph can read it and use that information to create the graph. So we now need to create a few more things. So first of all, we need to get a max value for the graph. Okay. For languages, I came up with a short function that would return. Anyway, for this now, it's going to return 100. It's just a short function that would look for, like, okay, this is the highest number in this graph now, right? It's going to look for a number that is slightly higher than it. Because if you remember when you were doing graphs in secondary school, your scale, your maximum scale on either axis, whether the y or the x axis, is always somewhat bigger than the highest value you have that goes in that direction. Like say your highest value on the y-axis is 9, and your scale can be 10 or 12, something like that. Your scale is hardly ever exactly the highest value. Most times it's not. Usually trying to make the scale a little higher. So that's just what this get max scale does. It's just pick the highest value and kind of try to find a value a little higher than that to use as the scale, to use as 100%. So now we turn the third object into, this sorted array. You raise the hand, Jane.
Sorry, was a mistake.
Okay. Yeah, so this is now I think we experimented with these somewhere. Let me see if we can show this. Okay. Anyway, this is kind of what the sorting. Remember we had okay. At first, we mapped over the countries, yeah, returned languages, and then flattened it. So this is kind of what the array would look like. Just one array that has a bunch of languages in it, right? So we, the loop is not here. Okay, we've got this loop here. So let me console log. Here. This is what count looks like. It's just an object that has English 2, Russian 1, Arabic 1, Samoan 1, like that. And then we do this whole sorted thing, and then you get something that looks like this. English 2, this one, like that. Yeah? And then, we now want to turn this in an array of smaller arrays that just contain the language and the number of times it appears. We now want it to have instead be an object that has these three values: title, width, and value. Remember when I showed you this array, that's what I said. We've got title, for example, world, width of the bar, let's say 100%, and then value, 7,693, blah, blah, blah. That's what we want instead. So we just do that. The title already is the language. So item square bracket 0, in this case, Togo, Nigeria, whatever. The width now is going to be this value, but divided by the maximum, scale, the maximum value, and then times 100, because we kind of want to turn it into percentage. Width goes from 0 to 100%. So that's what we have in mind. And then value, obviously, is just the number of times the languages, the number of countries that speak that language. So that's that. And return values, return what we get there. So this is just what count languages does. Count population is similar. Okay, we had to do a few replacements because now that I see it, it's a bit silly because later on we're going to be, anyway, it's all good. The reason I did this is because if you check this picture, these people are funny. There's USA here, and there's Russia here in the population side, right? USA, Russia. But in the array that they gave us, if we go to US, what is written there is United States of America, not USA. So the thing was a little long and was now spread into 2 lines, and it was annoying because it wasn't looking like. So even Britain, United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, this is just long. To take up like 2 or 3 lines, and it'll just be annoying. United States of America. So because we're only displaying the top 10, and USA and Russia were there, and they were taking 2 lines instead of 1 line, I just decided to kind of replace their names, sort of, just for the purpose of that graph. Although now this seems silly because by the time we start filtering, we'll meet other countries that there are no replacements for. They'll just be long like that. Sad. So yeah, at the beginning, sorted population, we get filtered countries. We map over it to return the name and the population. Okay, and then sort them by population, highest to lowest. This one, there wasn't any of that craziness of doing counts. Sorry, where am I? There wasn't that population of doing some kind of counting with a loop or something. Just this map was able to do that, and then we sort. Okay, so we get total population, world population, with countries data, because I noticed even when you filter and they go down and show the world's population charts, this one. Yeah, I see world is still showing 7 billion, even though the rest of them are just Bulgaria and the rest. So at all times, world population is always total world population. So we need to use country data for that. So just a simple reduce ACC plus current dot population. That's that. We add up all the countries. So once again, since from this sorted population, we need to convert it to an object, to an array of objects that have title, width, and value. Straightforward thing. We already know that total population is being used as the maximum scale, so no need to calculate maximum scale. So at the end of all this, we now need to add an object for world population at the beginning. So on shift is an array method that adds things to the beginning of an array. Yeah. So we just put in this object. World's width is 100%, obviously. Value is total population. And that's that. We return this. So now populate graph is also kind of straightforward. Graph wrapper is that array or that element that will contain all the bars. So first of all, we empty it. Graph wrapper.inner.html empty. Okay. Then we start. We're passing an array into populate graph. We start looping over that array, and we start adding the individual bars. This is a template for the bars. It has this div for the whole line called graph line. There are stylings for it. Okay, we use Tailwind, but there are stylings for graph line somewhere here, tailwind.css. Probably. Okay, then we have this p tag for the title, world, English, whatever. And okay, so it has a particular ID, and we'll come to why it has this ID later. And then the width. Originally, we were supposed to put, the width from the object into here, but we started out as 0 because we want to do that flutter effect. And if you look at the flutter effect very well, you see that every bar starts out as 0, and then after a bit of time, they get filled in slowly, sort of. So that's just kind of what's happening. They all start out 0, and then after they've started out 0, this one gets a value, this one gets a value, one by one, they all get a value. And they have a transition. So because we want that transition to, transitions in CSS now, it's usually when you are changing from one value to another value, not when you are putting in a first value. You wouldn't see a transition then. You'd only see a transition when you are changing from one value to another value. So it was essential that we start them out at 0, so that by the time we give them a value, there is now, something for a transition. So when this gets a value, it's now transitioned from 0 to its value, 0 to this value, 0. So you get that whole flutter effect. So yeah, they all start out as 0. This one has value.localstring for the populations mostly, because the populations are in millions and all that. And if you were just to see a block of 9, 10 numbers, it would be kind of unreadable. You need the commas. So if you have a number, .localstring can easily put those commas for you. Okay, this was just a console log to ensure that we can target this bar. We can be able to get this bar. I think we should remove this. It's not necessary anymore. Okay, so yeah, after putting in all the bars, then we now need to be going over them one by one to be giving them their actual width. So the width of this bar right now is array square bracket I.title dash bar. That's the same thing as here. So we use get element by ID to get the bars one by one and start giving them their weights. Bar.width, style.width is equal to width. You know. And the interval between them is 100 times I. So the reason why this times I is here is that, okay, I've removed that thing. There used to be something here that was showing that if you have two set timeouts, right? One is 1000 for 1 second. The other comes right after this. For example, I mean, like you duplicate this, you know, this one is 1000, this one is also 1000. They will return results at the exact same time. So if you really want some difference between them, then as this one is 1000, this one needs to be something other than 1000, something bigger than 1000. So if you want a uniform time between them, then just something addition. Maybe this will be 2000, next one will be 3000, 4000, like that. Then you'll now be having them happening in 1 second intervals. So this will happen first, then this, that. So that's just why this is. So at the beginning, this is 100 times I. You know, I starts out 0. So this is 0. The next loop, that would be 100 times 1, 100. The next one, 100 times 2, 200, 300, 400, like that. And then all this as well. So that's just all that happens in populate graph. Okay, get max scale is it's a little funny. Anyway, the code is online. You can go and look at it. We are really running out of time. So display country cards is, you've already seen how populate graph was. This is just something similar. Card list starts out as an empty string, but we keep adding this to it. This is a template for the countries. So we put in flag, we put in name, capital, languages, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, countries wrapper.inner HTML is equal to card list. That's all. The rest of the work was done in HTML, CSS. So go to graph. Now there's this very nice function that's usually used for those go to top buttons, scroll to top buttons. So scroll into view. Now we've got this first parameter, which is align top. Like it's asking, should it align it to top or not? So we said not, because we don't want the top of the elements to be at the top of the page. We just want all of the elements to show. Or rather, we want the bottom of the elements to be aligned with the bottom of the page. That's what false means. So behavior instance. This is an object for options. So this is talking about scroll behavior. If I change this to smooth, let's see what happens. So I click. Wow, this thing is still going instantly. It's supposed to go a little gently. That's just troublesome. But anyway, from what we saw in MDN docs, that's supposed to take us there a bit gently instead of instant. Yeah, behavior. So you write smooth, it should animate smoothly instead of instantly in a single jump. So I'm not exactly sure why this one has decided to let me down. But anyway, that's that. So okay, sort countries. I think it's one of the last functions. Yeah, it's the last function. So sort countries, we have something a little similar to what's happening in populations, these graph buttons. Okay, so this is how the sort buttons are. we've got a button, and then we've got a span inside the button. We didn't just write the name, the text on the button directly because of this. If you look at these buttons, you can see that they have some arrows sometimes when you click. Like here, there's this up arrow. Let it come around. So we've got up, down, here. Those up, down arrows. So they were done, we managed to achieve them with before and after. And they are done before and after to this name, to this text on the listing here. So I made them a span so that we can now put pseudo elements in them. Because if you notice from here,
But no longer sharing your screen.
this, are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not up. I'm on the screen.
It is because my phone's help is seeing it. I'll
Oh,
just
really?
stop and share again. So I think I'll only post this video for this thing because now I've gone over the whole thing, kind of. Because rather than having 4 videos to watch, I think just this one is okay. You can see the screen, right?
Yes, okay.
Okay. So if you look at these arrows, you notice they are always a fixed distance away from the text inside the button, not away from the edge of the button or something like that. So that means it's this text you use to, will I say, determine the position of these arrows. And that means you need to get the text as a separate element. And so we use span to get that. So in the CSS, we've got before and after elements for it. But we now tied that to this data attribute, data sort. So if data sort has up in it, then you will see the up arrow. Data sort has down in it, you will see the down arrow. Any other thing, empty string or anything that is not these two, you will not see any arrow. Okay, so let's see that happen. Yeah, so we get up arrow and down arrow here. So that's how, or that's why we did things this way. Cool. So now again, we are creating one function that should be used for these 3 buttons. Yeah, the function is called sort countries. So that means the function has to now be a little generalized, which usually means more code. So first of all, the function should be able to tell which button was clicked. Okay, and that's why there's this data btn name, so that we can easily tell that is a name button that was clicked, it's a capital button that was clicked, it's a population button that was clicked. And that's not all. The button or the function should also be able to tell what is the current status of this data sort. Because you can see, I think there was a place where they clicked on buttons multiple times. So you're able to see it from there. If name is already up, like it already has the up arrow, and you click it, it will turn down. If it's already down, it will go up. If there's nothing on it, it will point up. So you can see that the state of that button, of that, the arrow, determines how the sorting should go. Okay, so 2 things. The function needs to be able to tell the value here and the value here. It needs that to be able to know what it should do next. So that's the first thing we're doing. First of all, we get the button, e.currentTarget. We can't use e.target anymore in this case because there's a span, or rather there's the button that you mean to click on, and there's a span inside of that button. E.target will point at the actual element you clicked on. So that means if we click on the text itself inside our button, we have not clicked on the button, we have clicked on span. So e.target will return span and not the button. But e.currentTarget is always going to return the element that fired the listener, or the element the listener is attached to that made that function to run, which no matter what happens is always the button. So to get the button for sure, we use e.currentTarget. Now btn name on dataset on the actual button, that's this. To get data attributes, you can either do element.get attributes and write this exactly as you see it, or you do element.dataset. Then you now begin to kind of figure out what this one is. If it is something dash something, then it will be converted to camel case, like in this case btn name. If it's just one thing like data sort, then of course it's just going to be dataset sort, like that. So this is the name. So this tells it which button you clicked. Is it name? Is it capital? Is it population? So next thing is to get sort status. And so we look inside that btn for anything that has the class btn text. That's what we're doing here. Query selector btn.btn text. So that means that this is the span. This is going to return the span. So we check dataset in that span and sort in that dataset. And that gives us sort status. So now we have btn name and sort status. So we are good to go. So first things first, we'll set all the data sort attributes for all the buttons, all the spans in the buttons. Set all of them to empty string. It's like clear everything first of all, so that we can now properly set the one we want to set. So we clear everything, and then we get a new sort status. If the sort status we got here was up, then we should return down. If it was not up, then it should return up. That should be the new sort status. Because if you think about it, if the arrow was pointing up, then if you click on it, you want the arrow to point down. If the arrow was pointing down, which means it wasn't up, we want it to go up. If the arrow was not showing anything, we still want it to point up. So this logic holds. So next up is to set sort status for the span inside our button to the new sort status. And that's cool. So lastly is to actually do the filtering, or rather the sorting. My bad, sorting. So now there are four options. You see, we can either be sorting by population. It's not here, I wrote this. Okay. Yeah, we can either be sorting by population, or we can be sorting by capital, or we can be sorting by name. But the problem now is that population is a number. Capital and name are both strings. And the way you sort strings properly is different from the way you sort numbers properly. Okay, so to sort numbers properly, then you got to do this population minus that population. If you do A minus B, you are going from smallest to biggest. If you do B minus A, you're going from biggest to smallest. You can just check this out. Population, this is B minus A, right? Let's see, what does it return? We get this. This is actually bigger. This is 45,798,272. While this one is 5,908,726, and the last is just 598. So this biggest to smallest. But when you are doing for strings like capital or name, then you need to be doing this local compare. This string dot local compare this other string. Okay. The reason we have this little complication here is because some of the objects, some of the countries don't have a capital. Their capital is undefined. Remember, this is something dot local compare something. If you have undefined dot local compare, you have already started having problems because you cannot read properties of undefined or null. Okay. So we needed to account for that possibility that a dot capital can be undefined. So we just put this other option. If it's undefined or null or whatever that is falsy, ignore it. Just use empty string, because with empty string you can now do dot local compare and move on. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much what's happening here. So if it is population, and if the new sort status is up, it means we are doing this. If it is population and the new sort status is down, it means we are doing this. If it is not population and the new sort status is up, it means we are doing this. If it is not population and the new sort status is down, it means we are doing this. So 4 different possibilities. And that's what we're doing here with an if statement. And that's just essentially what's happening. If you feel the if statement, if else is rough and not readable, you can choose to use switch. That's usually more readable. But anyway, both of them return the same answer, so it's just up to you and the convention and whatnot. So that's that. Filtered countries will be sorted however way, depending on the situation. And then we call display country cards with filtered countries. This is one of the, when I say good things about abstracting functions like this. So display country cards that we created earlier, we're still using it here because it does the same function. We just need to pass in a different array and we'll get a different something. So if we look at it, it works. Okay, I need to save this. I remove those up and down. Okay, so ideally or originally, right out the box, it's already arranged by name of the country. So if I click it, it will still be the same until I click it again and it's pointing down. Then we see Zimbabwe, Zambia, Yemen, blah, blah, blah. Sort by capital, we get this. Okay, these capitals are undefined. Yeah, I think later we need to do something about this. If the capitals are undefined, then they should not show a capital instead of us seeing this entity. Okay, so we've got Abu Dhabi, Abuja, Accra, Adamstown, blah, blah, blah.
Did I hear Abu Dhabi? Hi, somebody coming to visit me.
A nice one. Okay, so down, click capital again, it points down. We start having capitals from behind. Zagreb, Yerevan, Yaren, whatever. Population, as you can imagine, we've got this undefined, population 0 places. Can you imagine? Nobody lives here. And it has a flag. That's just crazy. It has a flag, it has languages that are being spoken, but nobody lives there. Okay, so we've got Antarctica even has more people than these places. That's serious. Okay, population down. We've got, as you can imagine, China, India, US. Nigeria is still here again. So that's that. So with this, we're all done and we just need to do the filtering. Hopefully these 30 or so minutes should be enough for us to do that and we can call this project a wrap. Right? Any questions so far? No questions. Okay, so what do you think should happen here? How do you think we should do this? Because you know that as we are writing, we have, let's say, N-I. In fact, the moment you write N, we should start seeing things with N. Okay, I didn't say this earlier. The filtering we're doing is not only by the name of the country. Actually, it's by capital or language, just capital, name, capital, or language. So if I write N, I should be seeing countries that either start with N or their capital starts with N or one of their languages starts with N. Those are the things I want to be seeing. So how do you think we should go about this? That every time you make a change here, if you write NI, you see things that start with NI. If you remove I, you only see things that start with N. You know, and of course, this changes accordingly, immediately. As you're typing, it's changing. So how do you think we should do that? Now, question are they ask or they expect answer? Just say something at least. Give it a try. Give it a whirl. I should be pointing fingers. People are only 3 here now. Yeah, Jane Alpha.
I'm trying to think.
Trying to think.
I'm trying to think.
Goodness, how are you?
We're not even up to 3. We're 2.5. Felix is AI keeper.
No, there's Bashir here now.
Oh, Bashir. No, I can't see
Been
Bashir.
quiet.
Bashir would have answered for us.
What about you now? You don't
I
answer
don't
for
know.
us. Hala. Okay, Bash.
Sir?
You have been following us now, how far? How do you think we should proceed? We want to do the filtering now. So remember how it goes now. As you're writing, you're seeing, first of all, this one will show up that will say so and so number of countries met the search criteria. Then these ones will reduce, obviously. Or it's only the ones that meet search criteria that will show. I want to observe something. Sorry, just a minute. I want to see. Now population is going from down. As they are searching, it's also still following that population, that sort way. Population is going down to up. As it's searching, is it? I want to just properly observe whether this, like after doing a sort and you start writing a new filter, does it still follow, the direction of this sort as it's displaying countries, or does it just display it as it's, okay, it would, because they're already sorted in a particular way. So if you are filtering that particular array that has already been sorted, it will still remain in that direction of sort. Okay, all good. Okay, so anyway, what do you think is the first thing we should do? Yeah. You're not sure? Okay, we've got this. Let me just name it search input. So first thing we need to do is to actually put a listener on that input. So we should get the input first of all. I think here. Const search input. Document.query selector. Search input. Okay, so we can say search input dot, what do I write to put the listener? Jane, what do I write to put the listener?
Add event listener.
see your name is Jane.
Bashiru Jane.
I think there's a guy that is named Jane. It's one of these shows, The Mentalist. Have you guys watched it? It's one of those old series, like detective series. He's a guy, but his name is Jane. Very annoying guy. None of you have
Bashiru
watched it.
Jane.
The Mentalist.
No, I haven't.
I'm surprised.
Like something I
Some of these, channels like on DSTV or so that show series, it's quite popular there. Well, it used to be quite popular. I don't think they're showing it anymore. But maybe that kind 10 so years ago, they showed. His name was Jay. Okay, so add event listener. So here's another question. What event do you think we should use? Remember, we want the changes to be made instantly. Every time we make a change in the input, we want to see that function should run. So what event do you think we should use? Jane, you think it's what?
You said what event, Abby?
Yeah, what event?
Event or target?
No, event or target is a proxy of the event. I mean, here we have
what
click.
Event?
We have click.
Okay.
What event?
It should be on change, I think.
On change. You sure about that?
Is it not input? Like when you're typing.
It's input.
I think it's on change.
Okay, so here's the thing. In React, you'll be absolutely correct. But in Vanilla JS, you wouldn't be. On change, we did that when we were doing forms. On change in Vanilla JS will run after you have finished typing and you've left that input. Like you finish typing and you click somewhere else. It's almost like on blur. It's when focus has left that input that the function will run. But on input in Vanilla JS is actually the one that you should use. Every time you make a change, you add something, you delete something, it will run.
On input?
Yes, on input. So the event will be input. The event, this input event, on input event doesn't seem to exist in React. They just did on change. I guess because they know that on change here is working like on blur, and there's already on blur event normally. So they just kind of, made things simpler. On change should work exactly how you think on change should work. And if you want something to happen on blur, you use a blur event listener. But in vanilla, such is life, things are still the old way. So on input is actually what you should use. So what do we call this? We can call this function filter countries, right? Yeah, filter countries, we'll create it later. So first step is done. We've gotten the search input and we've attached a listener to it. So let's go. Function filter countries. I don't think we need to pass the event because I don't think. True. My bad. We need to pass the event because we need to get the value from the inputs. Well, it's not like it's so necessary because this is the only input in the page, so we can still get the value even without passing the inputs. You understand? Since the part of the reason why we attach this is to do e.target and either target of value or dot name to get the name or the value of the input. But we've already assigned the inputs we've already gotten this input specifically. So we could just do search input dot value, search input dot name if we want to. Yeah, individual. Oh, lovely, there's lights. Yeah, but anyway, we'll still run things like this. So const targets, or rather const value, will be equal to what? What's the value from the input? e.target.value. Okay. So now the actual filtering. Oh, I see. So what's this called now? Const. Do I just call this filtered? Let's just call this filter. I don't call it filtered countries because they clash with that global variable. And I need that global variable in here. So const filtered will be equal to. Now, we can't be filtering from filtered countries because filtered countries is already a watered down list. We need to be filtering from the main place, countries data. Okay. So countries data dot filter. I mean, we're doing filtration, or filtering, so it just makes sense to use filter system. Country and then something. So, but since there are going to be quite a few things we're checking, I think it's okay if we do like this. So now we're going to be checking for name, right? So if return item dot name, country dot name, what string function would you use if you want to check if a string starts with something?
It starts with.
That starts with fi. We'll go fi sw. I wish I can pause this thing sometimes. It's going so fast. I want to confirm that it starts with and not just contains, or rather includes, because that's different. So okay. Yeah, it's not starts with, it actually includes. See fi. The fi here is in Sophia in the middle. So it's not starts with, it includes.
Okay.
That's cool. So nice one. So country.name.includes. Includes means that block of that substring can be found somewhere inside the main string you're searching in.
Yeah, but you said starts with.
Yeah, I said that first because I thought that's how it was going. But I just had this thought and decided to go and confirm. And it was includes. So includes value or country.capital. Now we have a little problem because country.capital may be undefined. So we need to do this once more. Or do we even need to do that? I think we can avoid it with just optional chaining. Country.capital.includes value. I wonder if we did optional chaining in the other place, would it have worked out okay? Maybe later I will try that. Now, or again, languages. But you see that languages is an array of things. So essentially we need to be checking the languages one by one. It's unavoidable to have a loop there, to have a second loop there. Or country.languages .sum. Have you guys used sum or every?
I have heard of every, but I've never used it. Some, no.
Kind of everybody never used it. So they work kind of like an AND or gate. When you use sum, for example, now if we say for each language, return the languages that rather language dot includes value. So what happens here is that if any if at least one language in here includes this value, this function, this dot sum is going to return true. It returns Boolean, right? The return is Boolean, true or false. So if none of them at all includes this value, then it's going to return false. But if you use every, then it will only return true if all of them, every single language it meets includes this value, then it returns true. So depending on the situation, some and every are very useful things. Like here, we've seen a use for it. I mean, I would dare you to tell me some other array method you can use here as simply as this that will just tell you true or false. So simple or other nice use case for it. I think we can move this down and move this one down. So yeah, this should do. Filtered is equal to countries of filter. The country name includes the value, or the capital includes the value, or any of the languages includes the value. Fine, it will return that country. Yeah, because this is filtered, it will return that country. So now that we've got this filtered, what do we do with it? We're going to say filtered countries. No. Yeah, filtered countries is equal to filtered. Okay? And the reason I'm doing this is that, you see now, I've realized that what we're doing here is we are filtering countries' data, which means that what we're doing is not going to necessarily be in line with the current sorting direction. So we're going to filter from countries' data, right? Then you get a particular list and set it to filtered countries. Then we're going to call sort. But that's a problem. That is actually a problem. Okay, so to make this happen, I think we need to make some changes to sort countries. We need to turn this into two functions so that it can work here and it will also work for here. So what do we do about this? Okay, so once again, I'm going to create some new global things. Let's sort type be equal to what now? Empty string. And let's sort status equal to empty string as well. Okay. So in sort countries, after we've gotten BTN name and we've got status and we've done all of these, then we're now going to say sort type is equal to btn name. Cool. And sort status. We already have sort status here. Okay. I'll call this sort direction. Sort direction is equal to sort direction is equal to sort status. Cool. Cool. So this part now will now be abstracted into a separate function. And that function will no longer be using new sort status and btn name, but it will be using sort type and sort direction from global. Okay, so that means as we have done this here, we can just call that new function because now we've set filtered countries to global. What was already in sort type and sort direction globally is still there. So if we call this function, it will just use filtered countries and whatever was in sort direction and sort type and do the sorting and display country cards. So that's what's going to happen. So I'm cutting this out. And I can also remove this. So what is for sort countries? Display sorted countries. Let's call this sort countries prep. So I need to change this up here. The sort countries prep. So this would be the actual sort countries. Function sort countries. And this one will take nothing. All its needs are already in global. So now we need to change new sort status to sort direction. This is a global variable. And btn name 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We change to sort type. Cool. So now that we've set filtered countries globally, we can call sort countries. But this isn't really all as well. Okay? Because now that we have filtered and we've gotten a new set of countries displayed here, we also need to worry about this guy. So whatever I was showing here before, whether it's languages or it's population, we need to find out and call that function again. Because you see, where are those two functions? Show population and show languages. They both work with, this works with count languages. And count languages works with filtered countries. Okay, so at the time it is called, it will use whatever is in filtered countries. Same thing with this one. Count population. It's still using filtered countries. Let's just be sure. Count population, filtered countries. Cool. So now we just need to check which of these two buttons, these two graph buttons, is active. Whichever one is active, we should what's the name? We should call the function for that one so that the graph will be updated to the new filtered functions. Okay. Yeah, we can close this and we can close this. So now at the end of this const active graph btn will be equal to document dot query selector. Dot active, right? Because where the hell is that function? Show languages. We are adding active to languages button, and the other one we're adding active to population button. So, and yes, this is also a class for it, graph BTN. Okay, so if it has graph BTN and has active, then it's an active graph BTN. So, let me just say active graph BTN name or active graph BTN type. So now that we've gotten the button, we need to also get the data BTN value. Is it population? Is it languages? So the data set dot BTN, right? Yeah, it's data BTN. So the data set dot BTN, and that will give us the type. So once again, we can just do the stuff that we did here. If type is languages, show languages. Only would now be using active graph BTN type. So there it is. I think with this we are done. So once again, in filter countries, get the value, filter according to that value. If return any country that the name includes the value, the capital, or the capital includes the value, or any of the languages includes the value. Set filtered countries to whatever you got from here. Call sort countries, and then call whichever of these function depending on the active graph BTN at the time. Yeah. So let's see how well that works. So if I write, let's move it this way. Oh, my bad. I forgot. Sort countries has been abstracted to a separate function, but I forgot to call it at the end here. It's supposed to be called at the end here. Sort countries. That's just crazy. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So we're back. This is capital. Is this going the right way? It's pointing down, but I'm seeing it starting from this way. Let me see this one. This one is pointing up. I think they are going the opposite way. Population. Up. It's going the opposite way. So I think I need to change this. Okay, this was the problem. Sort direction is supposed to be new sort status. Not the old one. Okay. Yeah, capital up. Capital down. Good. Zagreb. If I write N, okay, this has N, this has N. Okay, NI, we see Armenia. Now that I think about it, I think we have another small problem. See what I mean? NIG doesn't show anything, but there should be Niger and there should be Nigeria at least. The reason why this is not working is because Niger and Nigeria are country names and they are written in capital, or at least they have a capital letter at the beginning. But this one, small letters. That's one annoying thing with filtering things. So that means for this to work, we need to turn this everything to a particular case. Usually, we like to use lowercase. So the value directly turns to lowercase, and for all of these, this one dot to lowercase. Okay, now I need to check something. I'm a little worried about this. Undefined dot to lowercase returns undefined. Okay. So obviously if I try to do something else, it will not work. Like dot includes, I don't know, H. It's not throwing an error. Okay, just because of this first one, it's just going to return undefined no matter what. Is that so? I don't need a second optional chain. But if I remove this one, we get an error. Cool. So that means we're good then. Yeah, we're good here. So let's try it again. N I G, good. We've got Niger and Nigeria. Yeah, and the only countries are French and English. Population, Nigeria, Niger. So, all is looking well, isn't it? Oh, it's just you. See, this is the thing I didn't want. Anyway, such is life. So, Bashi Bash, any problems, any questions, issues? So I think before we close, I said we're going to try and make these things a little even. You see how Afghanistan is starting here, Albania is starting down here, Argentina a little up, Armenia up. So I want to kind of, what's the words? Generalize them so that they all start on the same line. Okay. And also we should adjust it such that, what is that thing? Antarctica that doesn't have capital. Capital should not show for it. So that we'll not be seeing this undefined. Either that or we just put empty string. Let's try the empty string way first. Okay, so first of all, display country cards. Now this image, And we've got this width 3/4, but no height particularly, no height per se. So let's look at this thing. You can see that a lot of the images, they seem to be inside another container. So we should do that. So that means this IMG should not just be like that. It should be, I don't know, we can put it inside figure. So class, let me see, what do we have here? Okay, class can be 3/4. So this will have the width 3/4 and a particular aspect ratio. Width over height. The width is more than the height. Let me look at it again. The width is more than the height. The width looks like it's a little, is it half? No, it's more than half. 60%. Let's say it's 60%. Let's say the width, or rather the height is 60% of the width. So that means 1 over 0.6. One divided by 0.6, and we have 1.67. So we'll use that as our aspect ratio. I should activate Tailwind now. So aspect 1.67. So that means the width here is going to be full. If I do it that way, width full and height full. Okay. Okay, I think I should also add this though. Max width full and max height full. Yeah, so that way it will kind of adjust. I think this should work. Even without me doing overflow hidden here. I believe this should work. So that way the figure has a clear-cut dimension. I think they put a shadow on it. Let's put shadow SM. Yeah, that way the figure has a clear-cut dimension. It's not passed. Yeah, so we got that. Oh, forgot something. MX Auto. Cool. So now all our names are on the same line. Yeah. Everything is on the same line. And we've got countries like this, Brazil. I don't know if you can see it if you look well, Sha, but the width is not reaching the edge of the figure. There's some space. Same thing with Burkina Faso, Bove Islands, Bolivia. Okay, okay, white, green, red. There may be some that the gap will be up and down. Like here, Canada is not reaching the bottom of the figure. So that means you worked. So if you want to contain an image into a particular space, You don't really need it to cover the image, to cover the space available, but you just need it to stay in there as much as it can. You can do this widthful, heightful, but max widthful and max height. That was just to show the full picture, but never exceed the boundaries. So I think okay, the capital thing. That one shouldn't be much. Like this, capital or empty string. Yeah, and I practically get an empty capital. Although, if we want to remove the capital entirely, if it doesn't exist, then we can do it just like React, or fairly similar to React, where we have country dot capital. Yeah. Now you see that you definitely have to use ternary, because if you don't use ternary, this is what will happen. This is why people are advised not to use this short-circuiting in React. But so I'll just move it up. But anyway, like this. So see what will show up now. Easy, undefined. Aha. But sorry. Or if we had used this and empty string, then I think we should get something better. Yeah, nothing shows. Okay. Where are those countries? No capital. So that's it. So any questions? Oh, we didn't add this one. Let me quickly add that. Search summary. So if you notice searching, if at all there is something in the search bar, then that thing will show. Search summary L dot inner HTML is equal to something else. Search summary L dot inner HTML is equal to empty string. So let me see what shows up there. So countries satisfied the search criteria. So this means Filtered countries that learn, or actually, I know this one is instantial, but anyway, all good. Filter.length countries satisfy the search criteria. For these countries now, actually we can also do something. Filter.length is less than 2. Then it should be country. Else it should be countries. So if there's one country, to be one country satisfy the search criteria. And let me see. Text primary, font semi-bold, and italic. Let's see how this looks. Something like this. So NIG, 2 countries, ERI, 1 country satisfied the search criteria, so our logic was okay. Cool. So finally, I believe we are done.